10. Go back again, 113. This is the meeting of the Harbor Plan Work Group on January 6th, 2025, starting the meeting at 1:13. I don't have the agenda in front of me. I assume we're going to establish a quorum. So if everybody can hear me, Tara,
Yes.
Peter,
Yep.
Emily,
Here.
Phil,
Here.
Dave,
Here.
Steve.
Here.
Is that it for committee member Mike?
Here.
Did you get sworn in?
No.
You have to get sworn in. Otherwise, you're still not here.
Maybe I'll see
You should hang out.
Okay, I'll just listen for today.
And then we have Rachel,
Here.
Jeff,
Here.
Tim,
Here.
Jack,
Here.
Dak,
Here.
or anybody else we don't see up there? Jeff, is that it?
I think that's it. Oh, Rachel's a voting member, right? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so who do we have for voting members then? That's great. We have Rachel, Dave,
We have
Steve, Phil,
1,
Emily,
2, 3,
Peter,
4,
myself,
5, 6, 7.
voting member, right? No, I think so. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and Mike would make 8, but he's got to get sworn in. Mike, did you get a copy of the draft?
Yes.
I did.
Did everybody get Phil's sort of reworking? Okay. But we don't have a hard copy of the agenda, anybody, correct?
I can walk over and get one
There you
if
go.
you'd like.
Agenda,
I can't read that.
that's approval of the agenda, approval of minutes, or
Hold
no
on.
minutes, then review of the draft plan.
We have. Which somebody want to make a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Phil made a motion, Peter seconded. All those in favor, Peter,
All right.
Emily,
Aye.
Phil,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Rachel.
Aye.
Okay, now Rachel, you're new to this game. Did you go get it sworn in?
I was just gonna ask you about that. No, I did not.
Okay, you need to get sworn in, so you're not a member yet either. So Mike and Rachel hang and you can comment. but you
Great. Okay.
can't. And Steve, you're okay with the agenda?
Yes.
Okay, what was the next one?
There's no minutes, so just review of the draft plan.
All right, so hold the
And progress.
minutes and now we're visiting the draft plan. Rachel, you got a copy too, right?
Yes.
Okay. All righty. I thought, just to open it, I thought, Phil's take on this was a really good idea. And I have it printed out for myself. And I suggest that everybody bring it with them the next time, print it out. Not that long. Did anybody have any disagreement with how Phil suggested that we approach this?
That makes sense.
That was great. Clearly had nothing else to do this weekend.
No, I think it's a good way to go about it, and just wanted to thank people who were able to provide comments, and those who have not yet. I totally understand, and basically I've just been compiling all those comments into one big document, and that's going to get more into maybe some of the like wordsmithing that we don't need to do today. But I think Phil's suggestion is a good one to look at the goals and objectives and make sure that they're right. So I think that sounds good.
I would like to propose that we do not get into discussing the recommendations at this point.
Right.
That this meeting ought to be, let's agree on the goals and the objectives. And make sure they all kind of make sense, because in a couple of instances, there are things that can be combined.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We knew it's gonna be overlapping and stuff like that.
And there's some overlapping and so that I think once we sort of build the framework. Then we can get to the doorknobs and the shingles.
Okay.
That sounds good. What do you think is the best way to go about reviewing? I can put this up on the screen, share my screen if that works for people, and make kind of live comments.
Because Phil and I think are the only two people in the room that actually have a hard copy of it sitting in front of them.
I,
I have it on my
Have it on
laptop.
your laptop?
one of the things I think, Kim, we probably look to you on is, do our goals and objectives fairly represent the feedback we got from the community? In other words, I think they do, because that's what you were doing.
Mhm.
But I think that we got an awful lot of input from a lot of different sources. And when that's all boiled down, does that yield what we're looking at as goals and objectives?
Yeah, I mean, generally the goals and objectives, you know, a lot of them we kind of started with looking at the goals and objectives that were for 2009 and kind of seeing, you know, which ones were still relevant, which ones weren't still relevant. So some of them might be similar to that. And then on top of that, looking at what is the feedback we've gotten from you guys, and then also the community, and try to really base it off of that.
I think that when we have our first public hearing, the public will tell us what we didn't put in.
That's true, yeah.
Because we're so close to ground zero.
Right.
We're in the finite nitty gritty details,
Yeah,
and what's not there will jump out at them. And maybe some of those people who attended meetings or who were interviewed will say, didn't put my thing in, or whatever.
Yeah.
and admittedly, there's a bunch of stuff we did not put in because it wasn't relevant, had already been done, or
Yeah.
really wasn't within the scope of this plan. Because we had a lot of stuff thrown at it, especially that first one over at the Nantucket Hotel.
Yep.
I mean, the issues, the needs and opportunities that start each section was really a summary of what either the committee or the public had said in terms of what they believe the issues to be. And then hopefully the goals, objectives, and recommendations that follow address those. So if somebody comes and they're wondering whether what they said was captured here, they can go first to that needs and opportunities section, because that's where we try to capture what it was that people told us were the issues.
And I thought that was very well done.
Like the needs and opportunities. Okay, so where do we want to start?
Well, I can start with sharing my screen. Just also one other thing we had noted. Let's see, is it sharing? Come on.
I guess what we want to decide is looking at each of the major categories, like
Mhm.
water quality and
Access.
access and all that. Let's talk about the goals that we have in green.
Okay,
And do we agree that those goals make sense and are appropriate?
okay. Because that's sort of is the basis for the rest of everything in each section.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I think that makes sense. And then also we still have been pondering from our end, if, you know, with overlap between some goals and objectives, and you kind of had mentioned that already. So I guess as we're going through this, kind of thinking about it, there's overlap that we should be condensing into sections.
one thing that I would say that struck me as I was looking at the outline of the goals and objectives was that there's part of this which is collecting data, getting information, making the community aware of things, education, but there's also a third piece which is action. And I think that when we're looking at the goals, we should be looking at, okay, one piece of it is education, one piece is data, but I think another piece is action. And if all we're doing is just, being a glorified administrator, collating, education and data, I think it needs the third leg of the stool.
Is not the recommendation part of it action, or do we need to be more specific?
Well, that's a question.
Or implementation. Just remember, I explained it before, because implementation was a separate group from us. The first time we developed this thing, because I was on the development group, but I was not on the implementation group. That was a whole different group of people. So I think, didn't we discuss this a while back, Jeff, of asking them to keep us all on for the implementation part of this?
Yeah, we talked about
It
it
makes no sense otherwise.
to some degree. I know it's also, people are gonna wanna have to stay on as well. Some people may feel like they've committed their time commitment to it and they're happy to come off, but
I think we're gonna wanna see what happens with what we recommended and how this is gonna be implemented and who's gonna implement it, that type of thing. Well,
I just think that the goals should also, each of the goals should allude to some type of specific action. I mean, it doesn't have to be really nitty gritty, but it just sort of alludes to the fact that it's more than just education and data collecting, that there is some action that we're looking for. And then the objectives can get into the more nitty gritty, but I would think we would want to make sure the wording of the goal acknowledges that there is action expected too.
how does everybody else feel? Emily?
I haven't actually finished reading all sections. I've gotten about halfway through, but my impression is that there are a lot of recommendations that are specifically action oriented. Some are more general and some are very specific. So maybe it's just something to keep in mind as we get to that level of this, to try to make sure that there are action items associated with each goal and objective. So that if we need to add anything in that is more action oriented, we can do that.
Plus, this is our roadmap. And so once it's done, approved, and it exists and it's live, and then we morph into the implementation committee. Then when we hit each recommendation, then we're gonna drill even further down, right? We're gonna really refine and then we're gonna say, okay, you, Natural Resource Department, we want you to do this. This is the recommendation. Here's how we think you should do it, and jumping off of each recommendation.
Because that was missing from the reports. Who's up there, Dave? I
Yeah,
can't see.
Are we gonna have a section like we did in the former plan where under the recommendations, we list who's we believe should be responsible?
Yes,
That's
that's there
everything.
already.
Steve?
Yeah, it seems to me in the past, we also talked about that, what Dave just mentioned about who might do it, but also giving them a heads up and bringing them in.
Mhm.
Right.
And I don't know where we are on that at this point.
That's why I've been so obsessed with sending this to Sheila
Mhm.
department, because this is really gotta,
I'm
she's gotta weigh in on this.
just for an example, and I think at our last meeting, which was lightly attended, a couple of things came out. One is for when you get down into the people, the groups, the organizations that are going to be affected, what is the term that we use?
Stakeholders.
We use we outline at the end of each recommendation, we outline the interested parties. And we discussed at the last meeting that there would be an asterisk on each recommendation, that there be one interested party that has an asterisk that is sort of the quarterback for that recommendation. So it's not a situation where, so I think we had discussed that at the last meeting. The other thing, we talked about was, anyhow, I think the other thing we talked about was that Kim and her team are going to go through, when we get to we're going to go through And for each recommendation, make sure that the parties that are noted as quote unquote interested parties get sooner rather than later,
Yeah.
like this next week, a stripped out version that involves them. For example, I just happened to be at the Board of Health meeting last month. And at the end, I mentioned to Rocky, who is the new head of the Board of Health. And
Who is,
what's that?
who's the head of the board?
The director.
The director.
Oh, Rocky. I thought you were
Yeah.
going like, who's on the board? And
No,
Rocky.
no, and John Hedberg. And I mentioned to them that they would be getting from us, Kim, a stripped out version because the Board of Health is mentioned in some of this stuff. And for
Yep.
them to be able, and the same with the roads and right of way.
Same with
So
the-
that's just two examples, but it's gonna be a bit of work, Kim, as I don't have to tell you.
Mhm.
To do that, but these people, before we memorialize this as a recommendation in the final version, we ought to get comments from these other groups because they might say either it's none of their business and they don't want to get involved, or we ought to change the recommendation in some way.
I've been making my own list for my organization as I go through, so I can share it with my staff and make sure before we all say we're responsible for this, that.
I mean, the feedback I got from Roads and Right of Way and from the Board of Health team was very positive, like, oh my God, you know, we really look forward to seeing this.
Mhm.
Wait till they see it.
I've got
Yeah.
these, but I can't see who those hands are.
Rachel and then Mike.
Rachel?
First of all, hi, thank you, Linda. I was curious first if I'm allowed to talk since I haven't been sworn in yet.
But right now you're members of the public, so that's
Right,
fine.
Okay, as long as that's okay. So I just wanted to comment on the idea of action items versus recommendations, and I'm new to this, so bear with me if this is off base, but I think I was thinking the same thing, and I don't know if it's going too far, but I can give an example of a place where I felt like maybe we needed to be putting in more action items, and I think it was, I'm just as an example, objective 3, so improve stormwater management and maintenance of current stormwater infrastructure. I think one thing that I was just curious about was, should it be called out directly that, you know, we should be working towards disconnecting all stormwater inputs into the harbor? Or is that not the purview here, and does that go one step too far? I think I was trying to understand that recommendation versus action component, and, you know, when it's too much. So this is.
It's never gonna be too much, Rachel.
Thank you. What was
We-
that?
Too much.
Okay.
The more granular we get in this thing, the more likely it is to actually happen instead of some pie in the sky thing, which is what ended up going to the implementation group the first time around. So the more specific we get, the more this plan might actually happen.
Okay.
So keep going with that. I mean, keep going through the document and putting your stuff in and sending it to Kim. Same thing with you,
Okay.
Mike. You're next.
Thank you.
Mike. You're mute.
Sorry about that. Just some comments on the action and implementation as well. Just a reminder that the Concom regulations have changed as of January 1. So there's some action and implementation that's actually already happening there. I am also new to the process here, and when we get to the fertilizer part or the BMP, I have quite a few recommendations we can do to sort of get that restarted or implemented again. I don't know if it's appropriate to discuss now, but I'll just wait for my cue on that. Thank you.
Well, feel free to say what you need to say. We'd rather
Well,
get,
so I mean, you know, as far as the fertilizer program has gone, it kind of went dark when town meeting recommended for the full ban. And one thing that was always with the fertilizer that I felt was like a bit of a burden for the town was to take on all the testing and everything onto themselves. And there's challenges on how to monitor fertilizer going forward. But one simple idea that I have for this is if you're a commercial applicator on the island, you're already required to have a pesticide license through the MDAR under the guidance of Taryn Lascola. And there's a lot of guys on the island that do, but there's quite frankly plenty that don't. I don't know who they would be or what those numbers are, but one thought to ease the burden on the town is anybody who comes in to get a town license should present their state license, and that there's quite a bit of training that goes into the state license as it is. You have to take your test. It's only done in English, which the labels are all in English, so that's the way it's going to be. I've already spoken to MDAR about that. There's no change that they're going to be willing to make there. But so my point is, if you come in with your state license, you've already been trained to a large degree on fertilizer as well as pesticides. And if you can present that to the town, then it could take a lot of burden off of them to just say, okay, well, here's the supplemental for the BMP. Learn this or attend. You have to show that you've attended an education process, which is always going to be a part of the fertilizer, because the turnover is just immense in the landscaping world. Who your applicator is one year does not necessarily guarantee that's who it's going to be next year. So there's ways to just, I'm going on and on, but to take some burden off of the town.
Jeff, you can probably answer that better. I mean, the fact that probably more than 50% of the landscapers here do not speak English as a first language. What is the deal with that? Should that be in the report that we would advocate for this type of information being done in multiple languages? Especially the test, for God's sakes.
It's a good question. I mean, I don't know. I feel like the state sometimes can be very inflexible, sometimes very flexible. I'm sure Mike has had meaningful conversations with them and totally take his word for it. We certainly could. I mean, part of it's creating those educational opportunities for folks as well. I agree with Mike that the state pesticide license is far more detailed than anything that we'll create locally. I know that test is kind of notoriously hard.
Especially when it's in English and they speak Spanish.
Well.
Yeah, unfortunately, that does put the burden to some extent on us to try to get the information out if the state's not gonna do it, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that we could explore, certainly, and I thank Mike for suggesting that, because that's a really good suggestion. I just don't feel like we have enough information to say one way or the other.
Well, as far
At
as
this
local stuff that we put out, that should be in the report that we advocate for it in being multiple languages.
Yeah, I mean, there's a big push from the state as far as, just environmental justice goes, and one of their categories specifically relates to minority involvement and inclusion. And that obviously can be, economic or, language barrier or a number of things. So it's something that they're focused on too. So it may be interesting to see if there's any willingness to revisit that to some degree. But I think that's something that if we create a goal to look into that, I think that's something that the implementation group can certainly sort out.
But I really think that anything we put out here for educational purposes has to be in multiple languages.
Well, I think that's the direction that all things are going. The problem that we also have too is, while Spanish is by far the greatest spoken group, we also run into a lot of Portuguese still. and more running into a lot of
Bulgarian.
things like Bulgarian.
Middle European.
Yeah, so it can be a lot, and then want to make sure that you're not missing significant groups. I mean, it's one thing to say, we're not going to provide it in a language that's spoken by, a group of 2 or 3. It's totally different to say, we're not going to provide it for a group of 200 or 300. So I think identifying those is something that will be a little bit tricky to do as well, to make sure that we're getting them all. Or as
Well, if we
many
don't
as
hit 'em
possible.
all, at least we hit the 4 major ones.
Yeah.
And a lot of my Brazilian friends understand Spanish.
Well, I'd also say there's a difference between understanding Spanish
They speak it.
and speaking it, and also being able to handle the technical demand of reading things like fertilizer labels and safety instructions. With the greater technical language than what's just typically spoken. We've run into that too.
On a lot of these crews, there are multiples of non-English speaking individuals. And there's usually one who I guess by the employer is required to speak English so he can communicate with
His client.
with the underlings, tell them what to do based on what the American, what the English speaking boss has to say. So maybe that's a thing that we put in there. We specify that at least one person, one Latino, one Bulgarian, one Portuguese person, if that's what the crew is, who we communicate with the rest of the crew.
Well, I'd also say too, and this is me with a little different hat on than just government employee. The more you try to dictate how you want a private business to run,
Yeah.
the more difficult you're gonna be faced with. I think it's better to put the requirement out there that it has to be met. And if, I'll just pick on Mike because he's up and it says J&M Landscape at the moment. How he wants to run his business and work his crews is his choice as a business. It shouldn't be the town being like, well, you have to have 3 languages on a crew. No, it's his choice, but he needs to meet the requirements and know that if he doesn't meet those, that there could be potential consequences to that. I think letting the businesses sort a little bit of that internal work out themselves will lead to
Bill,
better operations.
I think it's.
Could I suggest for the next 50 minutes, 40 minutes, that we go through and talk about each of the goals
Okay.
associated with the thing? Because we really need to agree on that before we get.
And Steve's hand is up.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate under recommendations, any kind of implementation, written or recommendations. We've talked about this briefly before, but even if the town has, since we started this process, begun their own, begun to implement some stuff, I would really think we need to keep the language in here because sometimes things get started, don't get finished. And if we take it out because something has been started or looked into, then it's not, and we take it out, then it's not part of our record. Thank you.
Not bad to already be able to check some boxes by the time we finish.
Okay. Do you want to start with,
Sure, for water quality, if you can put this up, Kim, we have
up there?
only one goal.
Yeah.
Is that correct? One goal for water quality?
A lot of objectives.
A lot of, we have 4 under water quality, we have 4 objectives, but we have 1 goal. And I guess I might as well, for everybody's benefit, I'll read the goal. And this is water quality: to maintain and enhance the water quality of Nantucket and Manicat harbors through education and dissemination of information, monitoring, research, continued enforcement of local bylaws and regulations, period. That's the goal.
There's other stuff that should be added in there, Emily.
Now, let's
Stick to the goal.
be clear that the goal is at 50,000 feet, not 2,000 feet,
Yeah.
because then you have the objectives.
My one question about the language of the goal was going to be whether it should be limited to local bylaws and regulations. I think there's an objective under natural resources that speaks to state and local protections. And I don't know if it's worth just taking the word local out, so it's a little more general.
Put state and local.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Just put state and local.
Yeah, good catch.
Should I say state and local or just remove
I
local?
think you should include federal as well,
Yeah, go federal, state
we're-
and local.
because it's a federal no discharge zone,
Right.
harbor,
Yeah.
3 miles out, so you should include that.
Could you just simply put all relevant,
All, yeah. But I was thinking.
and then
you
you
could
don't
just
limit it?
Eliminate the specificity to make it more general
Is
too.
there an international one we need to pay attention to?
Global.
Well, no, but
So
And bylaws should be changed to laws then if you're extending it beyond
Yeah.
municipal.
Yeah.
We take bylaw out.
And
Is there
keep
any
law, and keep law in, just take the by out.
Yeah,
Okay,
okay. Anything else in that first one?
that's the goal.
Yeah.
Then flowing from the goals.
Why don't we just go through? all-
Yeah, okay, I'll read each of the
Let's go through
objectives.
The goals first.
Well, we just did the goal. We just read the goal.
Yeah, but we're gonna go to objectives now or just go?
Yeah,
through
for
all
that goal,
the
for that goal, these are the objectives.
Okay, I didn't know if you wanted to go through all the goals and then come back.
Okay, you want to do that?
I think we should do that. 'cause
Okay.
That sort of sets the
Okay.
tone for the rest of these sections.
Okay, so then the second item is natural resources. And natural resources has three goals. Goal number 1 for natural resources, to protect and restore where appropriate the valuable natural resources of Nantucket and Mattocket harbors.
Why is the word where appropriate in here?
For restoring.
because
Yeah,
it's
protect
not
the
always. In restoration, right, is. There are spots where it may not be appropriate, whether it's a cost or use conflict. To
Okay.
conduct restoration efforts in all areas.
Okay.
Like, I don't think we're ever gonna try to restore eelgrass in the Bilk Basin.
No.
It just
Okay.
doesn't make any sense.
Okay,
Anybody have anything to add on that one?
The only thing I would have to add, and I recognize we wrote this, and so I'm criticizing ourselves, but that, you know, with the goal, you want the goal to be very high level. So if you compare goals between natural resources and water quality, you know, like in this goal, we definitely could have included through education, through this, through the, you know, as we did in the water quality one. You know, like all this kind of stuff could be included in there. And so what I'm wondering is, you know, backing some of this up a little bit, like, I mean, you could really, and Jack, you can correct me if you think differently, but you could really almost delete a bunch of this and just say the big lofty goal is to maintain and enhance the water quality. And then the details are actually pulled out in the objective. I don't know, Jack, what you think?
Yeah, I completely agree, Kim. Because the
How would-
objective there should be an educational objective, regulatory
Mm.
objective, you know, that kind of thing to cover each one of those. And I think that there is, so you don't lose anything by doing it, and
Right.
it makes the goal statements more consistent and easier to digest, I think.
How would you change the first one? Not at all.
are we, I think we're okay with goal number 1 for natural resources, right?
No, they were suggesting to just make it say to protect, no, sorry, I'm in the wrong. Oh, for natural resources.
Yeah, we're on the natural resources.
Right.
So you
Yeah,
wanna
mostly I was just comparing, you know, the goal for water quality and natural resources and trying to keep it consistent between all the goals as to how much detail we're including in those statements.
Tara?
I think a lot of, like, for those two, natural resources and water quality, the goals could be essentially the same. I don't like the word maintain. I think, like, I would consider putting to protect, monitor, and restore, maybe. just as like a big headline, maintain just kind of like, we have bad water quality that's really bad.
We don't wanna
Do we want to
maintain-
maintain that? But I think there's stuff worth protecting, so I think, you know, kind of mimicking that between the two for the first overarching goals is worth considering.
Mhm.
I like that.
Maybe could I suggest that Kim and Jack, rather than us trying to try to wordsmith the goals here and now, you hear what we're saying,
We do.
and maybe the next go around, you modify them accordingly?
Yep.
Kim, at one point you had talked about combining these two sections. So should we talk about that since we're talking about goals? And I guess these goals are very similar, but is this the
Mhm.
appropriate time to talk about combining the two?
We haven't gotten to
No,
the
we
next,
haven't gotten there yet.
why don't we get to the next section and then we can, because we're just right now on natural resources.
Well, I think he's talking about combining that with water quality.
We haven't gotten to water quality.
No, we just
Let's
did
get to
this.
water quality.
We did do water quality.
We did water quality. We're just talking about goals right now also.
Okay.
All right,
Well-
so let's go to goal number 2.
Goal number 2 for natural resources, ensure the town's natural resources and environmental decisions are based on the best available, refined and updated science and data.
Is that a goal? Like the,
That's the goal.
That's in his,
I'm sorry, you're looking at a lower goal than what I'm on.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's goal number 2 for natural
Yeah.
resources.
we're on goal number 2, which is ensure the town's natural resources. Read that one. Because this has come up with some of the reports that we're getting on SBPF and a few other things, that they're not using current data, you know, that data is old.
Okay, so should I read goal number 2
Yeah.
again? Okay, so this is under natural resources, goal number 2. Ensure the town's natural resources and environmental decisions are based on the best available, refined and updated science and data.
Jeff, you got any comments on that one?
I agree. They should be.
Should there
based
be
on-
anything added to this one?
I mean, I think we should be making decisions on the best available data that we have. I think that. I like that goal.
Emily?
I guess I mean, it's kind of evident from, I think, what's below, but when I first read this, I was asking myself, what kind of decisions? Is this specifically like regulatory boards' decisions when they're reviewing applications?
Yeah.
Is it town department decisions? I just wasn't entirely clear on what the direction of it was.
I think that's what
All
was missing
decisions?
for me. Was maybe another
Oh,
word.
all.
Mhm.
Any comments, Jeff? Since since the Concom is regulatory.
In most cases, I mean, I think it's just encouraging is if the town is going to be making a decision that's gonna impact the environment in and around the harbor. Using the best available data. That's how I read that.
But what, the DPW, the Concom, the ZBA, the planning board, which?
All,
I know ensuring that's like a big goal.
I
Mhm.
mean,
And town should be capitalized, by the way, when you're using it this way. Wordsmithing.
well, I mean. I
like it.
I think it is all of those, right? Like, if you're
Yeah.
gonna decide on a practice,
Yeah.
whether you're. The DPW or sewer or harbor master
Or select board.
or select board, you should be making those choices
Yeah.
and decisions.
Right.
And scoping projects and finalizing those things. Using the best available data possible.
Well, should you say to ensure all town entities? Would that work?
I think that says that when it just says the towns. I think the town is all encompassing of the town.
Depends on who you ask. I don't know, I just think it's missing something, Emily.
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of okay with that either way, as long as we are encapsulating the big picture and that's the intention. I think maybe when we get down into later, looking at objective 2 and its recommendation, I'm not sure there's enough in there. As far as ensuring that that takes place. So that just might be put a bookmark there to discuss more later. So I'm not sure that really helps us with how to do it.
But for now, at least we'll capitalize the word town.
But I like the goal.
Yeah.
All over the place when you're using it this way, goal 3, town gap. Goal 3,
Goal 3.
Linda,
Foster-
excuse me, can I make a quick comment?
yeah,
Thank you. So just looking through this quickly, I guess my comment is similar to before. And it was based on not just goals, but sort of implementation components. And I'm not sure, I mean, it's fantastic if we're using the best environmental, the most updated scientific data, and of course, the town needs to be. But then where is the piece that says that these decisions need to be made? Does that need to be a separate goal?
explain that again.
So I think I guess when I'm reading this, I'm thinking through, it's fantastic to use the most updated scientific data, but I can just, when I'm going through the recommendations, and I know that's not what we're doing right now, but for example, I could just pick out mooring types, including possible conversion to eco-friendly moorings. It's great to have scientific data saying that this is a positive change in that direction. But how do we actually make that happen? So does that have to be a goal as well, a separate goal? Because we've been talking about conversion to eco-friendly moorings for a really long time.
That would be under action, would it not?
Yeah, like there's a recommendation to conduct research on those topics. And so I think following up on Rachel's comment, it would be trying to make sure that there's a place in here that has a recommendation for then doing something with that research.
Frankly, I think the word should be used all over the place, but that's wordsmithing right now.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, I guess I just want to follow up and make sure that, does it have to be a separate goal, even that implementation component, or is it okay and should just be in the recommendation section? I'm happy to do
Well,
whatever.
implementation is down to the action thing, which is
Well,
what
this-
Jim's talking about, which is separate from this.
Well, this comes down to what I think I said earlier, and maybe Jack and Kim, you can play around with this, but I think it would not be bad for each of the goals to allude to some sort of action other than just studying something.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, my opinion, and going back to Kim's caveat that we wrote these things, I would remove the two words ensure. Goals are considered to be a statement of a future condition, whether it's achievable or not. It's the condition that you would hope was the case. So the goal could read, the town's natural resource and environmental decisions are based on the best available updated science and data. That's the future condition that you want. When you put ensure in there, in the goal statement, you're assigning some responsibility for somebody to do that. And the implementation committee, I don't think wants to be in the position of having to ensure that the other town departments and committees and so forth are doing that. I think the goal statement is that that's what's happening, that the town is doing that. And then the objectives and the recommendations will explain how that's going to get done. That's my take on the goal statement.
I think that's really helpful because just distinguishing what the purpose of the goal versus the objective versus the recommendation is will help us go through this more easily, I think.
okay, so is everybody happy with that?
Thank you for that, Jack. That's very helpful.
Very helpful. Does anybody want to add anything to this goal number 2? Or are we good?
I would just say that so that her comment isn't totally left. I think maybe we can talk about what you were concerned with, Rachel, when we get into the objectives and recommendations.
Action plan.
Mhm.
Sorry, and just to go back, do you think it should be actually so the town's natural resources and environmental decisions are based on, or should be?
I love the word should.
I think the goal is are, because the
Yes.
goal is they
Yeah.
are, not that they
Yes.
should be.
There are other things that we need
Yeah.
should.
I agree.
Goal number 3,
Okay, goal number 3, foster an appreciation of the town's natural resources that leads to their protection.
Mhm.
or foster.
So then this should probably be more that the community has an appreciation for the town's natural resources or something to that effect, right? Like a future state of being.
Right.
I don't like the word foster.
Yeah, it sounds a little bit like central, central government.
Support and appreciation of the town's natural resources that leads to their protection through education or through outreach or something.
Jack, that's in your lap.
Yeah, okay, I get it. We'll probably have to do this to a number of them. But again, if we add the word education to the goals, then if you look down, in this case, the next objective talks about education. So the goal wouldn't need to say that because you're left with reading the goal, you're left with, well, how are we going to do that? And then the objectives sort of suggest how that's going to be done in a general way. And then the recommendations are more specific. That's kind of how it's set up.
I wouldn't use that word foster, find something else.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Support initiative.
Encourage, support, no,
I
encourage.
think you'll find that
Support.
a lot of that is already happening right now.
Yeah,
When you think about what the land bank does to get people onto their properties, to tell people about their properties, and then what the natural resources department does to inform people about how to recreational scallop, and then you're out there in the water, and then that's, I mean, I think in a sense, we're maybe just reminding those departments to do those things.
Okay.
maybe support efforts or do something.
Okay, Jack, you,
Yep, I got it already.
I think we can go to public access now, the third one. And
Yep.
Public access has, I believe, just one goal.
And that's not full enough.
So the goal is, can I read it? The goal is for public access to preserve and improve physical and visual public access to the waters and shorelines of Nantucket and Mattocket harbors.
All right, what's missing for me is adding new ones. I don't want to just preserve and improve what we have.
Mhm.
We need
Increase.
to seek out new ones and increase public access to the harbors.
Mhm.
So I think that's totally
That's a
missing
good point.
there. You
Yeah,
gotta have it. That, a lot of it was, a lot of the comments we've had at these public forums, we need more public access.
Yeah, that I agree should be added to the goal because right now it's in objective 2. Cause I was trying to figure out at first the real difference between objective 1 and 2. And I think objective 2 is meant to cover new, but the goal isn't really specific about that.
Mhm.
Just, if I may, just a suggestion, could you put like to expand, preserve and improve
Yeah,
Yes.
expand work.
Yep.
Because it's gonna be ever
physical
more,
and visual public access?
that's a good point.
This is gonna keep coming up.
it's gonna be ever more important as sea level continues to rise.
Yeah.
And we lose what is. It's something I've been thinking about over break about. How we protect our access when the water comes up. And specifically, I'm thinking about working waterfront.
At Children's Beach, even you can't get access to it when you got a storm surge. They put that thing up, you can't get your boat out.
Okay, well, I think we agree that we want to tweak that a little bit. To go a little bit for, okay. Number 4, commercial and recreational fishing. Now,
Is that word fishing is too narrow, too?
now
narrow?
I would say this is,
Boating?
if you, well, this is something, I just throw this out because there is the next major category after commercial and recreational fishing, boating and navigation. And, wait a second, hold on, I'm getting twisted around here.
It is.
We've got 3 things going on here. Commercial and recreational fishing, which is 2.4. commercial waterfronts is 2.5. And boating and navigation 2.6. And I was looking through all of this, and there's an awful lot of overlap. And is it important that we separate these into three different things? Or should we look to try to consolidate them? That's a question. I don't know, but there's a lot of stuff behind all three of these current categories.
Well, I think they're following the same pattern that they followed in the previous report.
And I don't
We
know.
don't have to keep
We
going
don't
with
have to
that.
do that.
It makes it simpler to compare them, but we don't have to keep going
We
with
don't,
that.
we don't have to, we don't have to,
Because commercial fisheries
But-
are totally different than recreation.
But-
I'm out there with my little dinghy fishing with a drop line. That's a totally different issue. That's how I
Linda.
started. Yeah, Dave, you up there somewhere?
Yeah, I definitely believe they need to be kept separate because they're very important issues, but they're all very different. You know, we want to see if we can build or create some type of a recreational fishing pier. We know we have to start supporting our commercial fisheries, be it shellfish or, lobster guys or whatever. I think they need to be kept separately because they're that important and need to be talked about separately because of their importance. If that makes sense. I think if you roll them all together, they're going to lose their importance.
Yeah, because in commercial, you've got the conkers, you've got the scallopers, you've got the
Well,
lobster guys, you got all these stuff going on.
well, I
You
think
got-
that's a good point, Dave, and I think while we doing that, then I think that we should make sure that if we're gonna keep them separate, we should keep the objectives and recommendations separate too.
Most definitely. And I wish I had gotten my comments in, but you're going to see that I'm going to talk about these specific things more, but I just think they're too important to roll up
Yeah.
together.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think does anybody disagree with Dave?
No, because you got it, this commercial is so totally different
Okay,
than recreation.
okay. So-
Yeah, the only thing I would
Okay.
say is that we might be able to do just some shuffling of some of these recommendations or objectives so that they're only showing up once. This maintain and improve infrastructure and shoreside support.
Well,
That we might be able to move that to a different section, like the boating and navigation, and make sure we're calling out the shell fishing and fin
right,
fishing.
but I think I don't know why in that objective, why we're limiting this to shellfish and fin fishing. I
Right.
don't,
Just say that.
I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say that because you've got all the commercial guys down there that are, you go out with those guys.
Yeah,
Those are,
the charter, but I mean, maintain and improve infrastructure and shoreside support necessary, period. I don't think we,
Mhm. Yeah.
So what we've got then is if we agree that we're gonna keep these separate, then 2.4, commercial and recreational fishing, there is one goal, and that goal is to sustain and improve the commercial and recreational fisheries of Nantucket.
you might want to work that word fisheries.
And I wonder, just based on what Jack said, we might tweak that. I can't think of the wording right now, but just something about that the fisheries are good.
I know we say it in the goal, but what we're really talking about is infrastructure,
Mhm.
so I'm not so sure that we shouldn't say maintain and improve infrastructure
Mhm.
for
support.
commercial and recreational fisheries.
Well, that'll be.
Well, it is objective number one.
Yeah, that'll be down the objectives.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of dimensions to maintaining the fisheries. You know, the next one talks about workforce development, and the next one I assume talks about another element of it. So yeah, the
Well,
management plan, the regulations.
yeah, let me just add one thing in here to keep going with this commercial. It's not just the fisheries, it's the guys who set the moorings, that's commercial. It's the guys who do the charters, that's commercial. So there's
Exactly.
a whole wealth of commercial that is not, I'm going out and catching fish with a seine net. It's not that. There's a whole bunch of stuff
Well,
involved
but that-
with the
well, that's,
commercial enterprise
wouldn't
that
that-
are water
Wouldn't that
related.
not be
That's a
commercial
commercial
waterfronts, 2.5?
Yeah.
Under infrastructure.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I think
all
this
that
is,
stuff.
so I think that if you're talking about the moorings, then you might want to be under 2.5 rather than 2.4.
Yeah, so I just, however you want to break this up, but there's a vast thing
Well-
more than just the word fishery.
Well, I
Yeah.
think this,
Water
Tim
dependent, water
and, Tim and
related.
Jack, I think that we're gotten to the point where you guys understand what we're trying to do, and maybe before our next meeting,
Hmm.
you could go through these 3 categories and,
Just split them
and
up.
kind of keep them, make them 3 separate categories and minimize the overlap if possible.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, the committee has done a really good job of arguing both why we should have combined them and why they should be separate. So we'll go through it with that in mind. I mean, maybe it's not broken down into the activity, but by infrastructure or by the ecological integrity or workforce or whatever those elements might be. But we get it. We know there's some overlap here. When we're talking about infrastructure improvement, we know it contributes to the fisheries. We know it contributes to the other working waterfront people as well. And we just need to sort that out, make sure that we've captured it correctly. So that people are going, well, why are you just talking about infrastructure for the fishermen? We
Right.
need it for everybody. And maybe that's
Right.
not clear the
Good.
way it's organized.
That's a good point, Jack, because the facility, whatever it is, wherever it is gonna be used by the mooring guy, it's gonna be used by, it's gonna be used by everybody. It's not gonna be limited just to the fishermen, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. All right, we'll take a look at that.
I would propose that, why don't we leave these 3 sections with the goals to Tim and Jack to refine a little bit more based on our comments.
Mhm.
And then we know we're gonna have a lot more meetings to go, but
Yeah.
I think this would be really good.
Mhm.
I
Yep,
would-
that's fine.
I would just like to add that I think overlap is better than missing.
Yep,
Yeah, I think we felt that way as well, but
And I totally agree, and I think that, again, what I said earlier, I don't want to water anything down because it gets rolled into something else. And I think we're also doing a better job as a committee looking at the specifics now, and call it wordsmithing or what do you want to call it, but we're getting down to the nitty gritty here, which is what we need for implementation.
yeah, it's been
Okay.
very helpful.
can we jump to then
Hang on,
2.7?
I just
Go
was
ahead.
gonna
Oh,
say
I'm sorry.
really quickly. I actually think overlap can be good in the sense that it also, when you're trying to prioritize what's going on, if it overlaps multiple sections, sometimes that creates a greater priority than something that's specifically in one. And I know it makes for a longer plan and a longer read, but sometimes when it comes down to, we have a limited amount of resources. If you can knock out multiple priorities for those same amount of resources, that has been identified as a better choice.
I just have a quick question, and I agree with Jeff on that, but Kim, I haven't finished my comments on these 3 sections. Should I go ahead and do so or wait until you guys look at them again?
Don't just throw any comments out. They can always incorporate them as they
Okay.
remaster the thing.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that would be best.
Okay.
definitely make the comment. It would be helpful to us no matter what we do.
Thank you.
I think we're at the point now where we can jump forward to 2.7. Coastal resiliency.
Mhm.
And I believe there is only one goal for coastal resiliency. Want to read it?
Yeah.
Minimize and prepare for the impacts of climate change within the harbor planning area or areas,
Areas.
plural.
Somebody doesn't like that.
I'm
They
sorry.
didn't like that one at all.
Is, so yeah, that might need to be changed again based on what Jack was saying.
Okay.
Like the town is prepared for, has minimized and is prepared for us. I don't know, something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I
yeah,
would throw the word resiliency in there because that's the word they're using here.
Mm.
Coastal resiliency.
No,
Well,
we are
that's
the
what-
coastal
I have
resilience
to deal with it
advisory
at the
committee.
HDC.
Well, it's incorrect. It's resilience.
Resilience.
We started out as the coastal resilience C and we switched to resilience. Want to stay consistent.
This is gonna be, just as an aside, I listened to Rob Ranney's thing on Saturday morning.
Did you have nothing else to do this weekend?
Yeah, I know, other than, go through the plan, but, within the next 5 years, there is gonna be real activity down at Steamboat Wharf.
Yeah.
It's no longer talk. And they're finishing up in, Woods Hole,
It's about
and they're
time.
coming for us next, and
Yeah.
if any of them have passed through Woods Hole in the last 3 or 4 years, it's total.
They got rid of that building?
I think they're in the process of putting a new one up, but anyhow,
Wow.
I think the whole point is they're talking about raising everything 10 feet.
Yep.
Wow. Good luck with that ramp. It's gonna be under
Well-
long.
They're gonna look at 2.7 for guidance.
Mhm, mhm.
But anyhow, that's. Any
Yeah,
more?
Phil,
that
you're
point?
talking about the new facilities at Woods Hole for the Steamship Authority?
Exactly.
Yeah, and that was quite controversial in the community. I mean, they weren't really very happy about that. So, but the Steamship Authority did what they felt they needed to do, I guess, for their business and for climate resiliency. But our recommendations as we go into that, I think it's in the commercial waterfront, is that the town really needs to be on top of that as a real partner in making those decisions. And I don't really know how that works. So the more insight we can get into that, probably the better for the plan. Because as you said, this might be one of the places that they look to just for guidance. So we want to get that correct.
That's right, because I think that, if you read the preamble to the action plan, this is, this is something that, the state and all of the associated agencies of the state are gonna be looking at this plan. And the steamship terminal is gonna be one of the main areas of focus.
Not just that, straight wharf.
Well, nice.
Or thing, the
That's
corner
what-
with the screen.
Yeah.
I mean, you got Easy Street,
That-
you know,
Which you put lights on to make it look like it was worth more than it is.
so anyhow, I guess, does anybody have any comments about that goal?
Well,
I think it needs to
Can
be
we-
flat.
if you remember back, we talked, we talked about this a lot, and it wasn't just the steamship, it was Highline, the Coast Guard, all commercial entities that we really don't have any direct input to, but may hopefully would be looking to this plan for some guidance, or at least in consultation. I mean, it's just not the steamship.
That's a good point.
But
Yeah, it's all-
wouldn't we Wouldn't this plan rely on the resilience plan that the town already did? I mean, is everybody happy with what that plan says about resilience, about the future of resilience on the
You're
waterfront?
still gonna drive it home in here, Jeff.
I was gonna say, well, the coastal resilience plan is the driver of the bus on resiliency.
Right.
Whether we all like it here or not, that's what the town's committed to, so.
Yeah, the plan, this goal can just point to us.
Yep. That's what I'm hoping, not to get out of it, but what
Right.
we need to do in this plan, since, as Phil points out, all investments and programs and decisions of the state look to this plan. So we need to make sure that this plan accurately reflects what the coastal resilience plan says in regard to all of this, because that's what they're going to look at. I mean, I'm sure they'll look at the coastal resilience plan as well, but there's a real connection here once the state approves this plan. So, and I'm going to guess that this does that. I hope it does that anyway, but that would be the key. That would be the key. I'm not sure. I mean, unless Peter or Jeff, there's a reason why this plan should go beyond what the coastal resilience plan has recommended. Is it soft in some areas that needs to be?
I think I've said this before, but this plan is only good for 10 years.
Right.
This plan we're working on now, the coastal resilience plan goes decades.
Okay.
And so the next time we're up doing this, probably won't be all of us, but the next time there is a harbor action plan update committee, then they'll be looking back at what we did in relation to coastal resiliency, and then revising and staying in touch with the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee and our coastal coordinator. And so it's going to track whether we can see that it's tracking now at all. So it's not, am I making sense?
Yeah, because
Yep.
we also talked about not waiting 10 years because of how quickly things are changing.
Well, yeah,
now.
yeah. Well, what I'm
We
saying
also
is that,
update this thing or check in with it more than like in 5 years, because things can change that radically.
right, but I'm just saying that we're going to be around, we're the longest range planners in the town. And so when this plan becomes, obsolete, or we're thinking we need to update it, then of course the new committee will be checking in with crack.
But all those entities that we're talking about are gonna have to go to the state for state approval under Chapter 91 and federal consistency, et cetera. And this plan, once this plan is adopted, this becomes another reference and check and balance for any future project. So we got to make sure we say what we want to say, so it gets referenced properly. So when somebody's saying something about doing something silly or not complying or going far enough as far as resiliency, on the resiliency side, they need to be able to step in and say, no, 2.7 of the Nantucket Harbor plan states that you need to do this and seek guidance from this. Am I right, Jack, as far as?
Yes, it's not quite as locked in as the Chapter 91 decisions, but it does say that the state actions have to be, that it doesn't say have to, it says something like state actions will be to the extent feasible or something like that, consistent with what the plan says. So the Chapter 91 decisions are locked into what any changes that you've made here, but those other decisions, the programmatic, the investment kind of things, they look to it, and they, to the extent possible, they're consistent with the plan.
Okay.
So, which is good.
Krista?
Hi, yeah, sorry guys that I was late, but building on this conversation, the state at several months ago at this point, have put together some potential revisions to Chapter 91 language, having to do specifically with any project requiring a Chapter 91 license to meet certain requirements for planning for future flood levels. And I can pull up the language while we're here, but I wonder whether or not, I don't know where that stands in terms of moving forward or not at the state level, but I wonder if that's something that the town would want to put in here is, Crack, I'm not sure where you guys stand on this and whether or not you have a blanket thing that you're looking for everybody to build towards, but we could put some language in here to Dave's point about being very specific that all development along the waterways has to plan for predicted flooding for 2070 or whatever date you guys want to use, or 7 feet of sea level rise. You could use a number of feet instead of a date.
All right, I think we've gone off topic here. We're back to the goal.
Okay.
And I'm having an issue with some parts of the goal of using the word climate change. If Peter says it's coastal resilience, I think we need to somehow work that word into that sentence. I think saying climate change is a little too simplistic.
Well, say climate change, sea level rise is more appropriate.
Well,
The impacts of sea level rise, I mean, climate change, okay, fine, climate change could just mean it's gonna get hotter
yeah,
and we're gonna sweat.
It's
But
not working for me.
but the reality is, we're just gonna get wetter
I
because the
think
water's
seawater change,
Sea
sea
level
level
rise.
change.
I think climate change has to come out.
No,
Or
okay.
climate change resulting in sea level rise.
Yeah, I think you should leave
There you
climate
go.
change in so that we don't
Resulting in
ignore
sea
that.
level rise. And that's what I'm missing.
Would there be a component of stormwater and things like that though in sea level rise? I mean, there is, but I feel like there's more than just sea level rise that's gonna impact our coastline as far as climate change goes.
Well, that might be down in the objectives and recommendations. We're just trying to be very minimalistic in these goals. And then flesh out below it on the objectives and things like that. But I think we need to rework that goal, number one.
Let's maybe, Kim and Jack, include something having to do with sea level rise on that.
Yep. And
Okay, keeping
look-
an eye on the clock, because we have
Yeah,
5
'cause
more
normally
minutes.
We meet for only an hour, but here we go.
The
2.8.
2.8, administration and coordination. And that has 2 goals. The first goal is pursue the plan's goals and objectives by implementing the recommendations over the plan's approval period.
And plan should be capitalized. Okay, wordsmithing. The plan.
So I guess what this goal is saying is that we, at the end of the day, we want to see the goals and objectives addressed,
Mhm.
and to the best in our ability, successfully executed. Okay,
Mhm.
then the next goal, increase the effectiveness of the town's harbor and marine-related departments and increase their resources commensurate with the economic and cultural importance of the harbors to the community and ensure protection of the harbor's natural resources.
And
That says a lot. I'm not sure where to start on that one.
well, the word, the last harbor the S should be on the inside of that apostrophe, not on the outside, because it's multiple harbors.
That's a good point.
So how we increase the effectiveness of the town's harbor and marine-related department, that in and of itself. Jeff,
Yeah.
you're gonna
and
be
I-
one of our targets.
Ready?
Yeah,
More resources.
That,
I mean,
then that
more-
really
more-
what it stems from. There was a lot of
Yeah,
comments
that's
on
the
the
answer to
harbor
that
needs
question.
more resources.
I mean, I want to make it sound like it's a simple answer, but it's a simple answer.
also what's missing, guys, is support for enforcement.
Well, that raises the other
That's a
thing
big
that
problem
I would
here.
say that's implicit in the missions of those departments that are tasked with those things to enforce those rules and regulations, that we need to be giving them the resources to do
But I
that.
think you need to hammer in
this
support
is the,
for enforcement, because there isn't a lot.
well, one of the things I've learned in my short time on some of these town committees, I have learned, we have all kinds of rules and regulations. There's no shortage of rules and regulations. And these rules and regulations have been passed because people think that that then will do something. The fact of the matter is,
You don't
there's no
enforce them.
budget.
There's no enforcement.
There's no budget because there's no budget.
That's right. They don't have enough staff.
So I think, this probably,
Just
this
because
goal
10 more people.
goes to the whole notion of if you're gonna have recommendations, and you're going to,
Implement them.
implement them, there's a budgetary aspect that cannot be overlooked.
And the goal was trying to suggest that, everybody wants more money, but this goal was trying to suggest that, the harbors and the waterfront are really important economically to the island. And I would suggest culturally important to the island as well. And therefore, it deserves more resources, not just because we, like everyone else, wants more money, but it's really important that the value of the harbors is recognized by the amount of resources it gives, commensurate with its value to the town. That's all we were trying to say in that one.
Resources aren't always just money too. Clearly.
No,
Right.
I know, I know we're not getting into the recommendations and stuff, but I just got to make sure I make my pitch as far as the embarkation fee. Not only do we need to increase the embarkation fee, but more importantly, we need to have oversight of the embarkation fee, which is what the Harbor Shellfish Advisory Board had put forward. So that the word oversight needs to be in there. Increasing the fee is fine, but we need to be able to better allocate the money once it is increased.
Well, it's all going to the police department right now with no control.
And that's why in our proposal that we put forward to this committee, we outline a review structure. Past
Where the funding should be going to, because when it was passed at town meeting, it was very specific, because I was there for 50 years of town meetings. Where very specific is what those funds were supposed to be used for. Not for what they're used for now.
Exactly, and that was 21 years ago, and it's never been reviewed since, but I'm not gonna get into that right now, but the oversight, I think, is important along with raising the fee for the future.
Yeah, and Steve has his hand up first. Steve?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment about goal number 1. I think we should remove the last part of that. This is over the plan's approval period, since we're already beyond the last plan's approval period.
That's fine.
Okay. Phil?
So I think Jack and Kim, you get the message that there needs to be some sort of mention in the goals that there's a budgetary issue attached to this. Otherwise, we're just collecting data and educating people.
Nobody's doing anything about it.
Yeah. And I see Dave. Dave, did you have one more thing to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, to Jeff's point, it's not only about the money, but when you say sufficient resources, you can state in there, personnel and financial. Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
And a question about the plan in general.
Yeah.
It's not in the public domain, correct? It's just internal now?
Right now it's just internal.
Except for the stakeholders are getting pieces of it.
So page 59, I want to show to crack at our next meeting. But I don't want to, I don't want it to go out to the public until we'll talk about it, but we'll say we're not ready to release it. But I want to keep them up to date.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I mean, technically it's a FOIA-able document as it is, right? So you can certainly share it with the committee. It's not the end of the world.
Okay, and we'll share.
Yeah.
So I think our next meeting should be to,
Objectives.
to review, the Jack and, Kim and Kristen's work on the goals and rewording where appropriate, and then we'll go through the objectives for each goal.
Yeah.
That might take more than one meeting.
I would
Yep.
think so. Because out of that exercise come recommendations
Right.
and action plans.
But I think if we get sorted out on the goals and objectives, I think the recommendations will kind of fall into place.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the the recommendations, the wording is generally very good. I just think it's gonna be a little bit of plugging it in where we're under the relevant objective.
Yeah, so wondering when you guys want to meet again. 2 weeks from now is Martin Luther King Day. I'm assuming people are. When would you like to meet again?
About the week after that.
Too long. As we obviously have a bunch to go through.
Your suggestion.
I don't know if you guys have flexibility the week of the 20th, if you want to try and schedule it on a different day, or just go for the 27th.
Calendars. Nice not having a meeting for 2 weeks. I just don't know what to do with myself. And I got one every day next week.
Meet on the 13th. It's, yeah, I mean, it's next
Does the
week.
27th give you guys enough time to get your work done?
Yep.
Let's go to the 27th then.
27th.
1 o'clock?
I'll send out an invite.
I think we need to plan on our usual hour and a half.
Yeah.
Don't see any way out of that.
So 1 o'clock on the 27th.
Okay.
Yep. And in the meantime, it'd be great if people just continue sending me any comments, and I'll just keep reading.
Yeah, don't wait for the redraft, guys. Just send them in.
So you never get sick, probably.
Linda,
Yep.
I think that's,
I gotta go pick up a.
that Peter and Dave's Peter.
All right,
Off the
you
children.
wanna take up?
Wait, guys, we gotta get a motion to adjourn
Motion to adjourn.
at 2:35. Peter made a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Emily seconded. All those in favor? Peter,
Aye.
Emily,
Hi.
Phil,
Aye.
Dave,
I.
Steve,
Aye.
and I'm on aye. And in the meantime, you guys get sworn in down at the town clerk's office, Rachel and Mike.
And he's going.
Okey dokey.
Yep.
Thanks, everybody.
Will do. Thank you.
Bye.